Hello and welcome back to the Jason Sellers Politics Podcast. I'm very excited to introduce my guest for today. It's the host of the Minneapolis-based local news and politics website, Twitter account, and podcast, Wedge Live. Let's get ready to welcome in John Edwards. Hey, welcome.
Hey, have I been introduced? I don't know how this works.
Yeah, I just did a brief introduction before.
I don't get to hear the introduction. Why didn't you do it that way?
I'll do a second one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's exciting for me to finally talk. Exciting to talk over, not email. So I'll just have a few questions for slightly different topics today.
Okay.
This is still a skill I'm kind of honing down, so I'm going to try to be natural and not.
As we all are. I realize that so much of this depends on the quality of the guest, because I don't know if you included in your intro that I also have a podcast, but if the guest is a dud, then the whole thing goes down in flames. So there's a lot of pressure on me, not so much pressure on you.
All right. I'm trying to cultivate a conversation here and not just read them off the script, which I'm doing right now. But so there's a script. I'm going to try to paraphrase it though. I'm just going to do a quick personal introduction and then I'll let you go. My name is Jason Sellers. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a 19-year-old Northeast Minneapolis-based political science major. And I follow the local politics scene, but I want to learn more about it. Currently just work at an ice cream shop in lower Northeast, and I'm soon thinking about moving to the Marcy Holmes-ish area of Southeast Minneapolis.
Okay. Well, I'm John Edwards. You might know me as Wedge Live on Twitter. I also have a podcast, which you can get wherever your podcasts are available. Thank you, Jason, for having me on your podcast. I look forward to experiencing it from the guest side.
Yeah, it's I've never done it from your current perspective, but so I can't say how it must be feeling right now. But
well, I don't prepare a lot as a host, but I prepare even less as a guest.
Yeah.
So this is much easier. Although there's risk here. I don't know what you're going to bring up.
Probably nothing too that isn't too hard to find online. So I'm not very research oriented. I mean, I am, but I'm not like extensive.
Well, let me say this is a terrible time for a young person to be getting involved in local politics. Very, very depressing. It's depressing me as an older person, as an old man. I get very sad paying such close attention. It felt like the golden age of Minneapolis politics is over. The 2013 to 2020 version, where we did a lot of good stuff and we had a very policy oriented city council that was doing a lot of stuff. And now we're in a transition to a time of the strong mayor, which I'm very depressed about, but I'll let you move on to your questions.
All right. I don't know if I mentioned, I mentioned it. I don't know if I mentioned it on this episode yet that admittedly I don't have a ton of viewers, but and some of them that do watch probably already know, but for the ones who don't, what is the quick pitch, the back cover of the book about Wedge Live?
Oh, well, it started as me going to neighborhood association meetings here in the Wedge neighborhood. So it's hyper local focused. There's a dose of comedy, which may not be your cup of tea. A lot of people get very irritated at me. And I want to say it's not because I'm an unappealing person. It's because they don't get my sense of humor. But either way, and it can get very substantive. I live tweet a lot of city council meetings. Mm-hmm. I try to focus on stuff that the big outlets have traditionally not covered, although we're entering a period in local journalism where there's a lot of new outlets like the Reformer. We've got Sahan Journal, Southwest Voices has sprung up to fill the hole left by the Southwest Journal. And it feels like there's not as many gaps for me to fill as there used to be. And it feels a little threatening, but also a good sign about the local journalism environment that a lot of those holes are being filled, that where previously it was just me, it felt like just me talking about those kind of things.
Yeah, I know Documenters is kind of a recent spring up, and I signed up for an orientation meeting, never made it, so that is something I am interested in. Just almost
wait, they have like a cutoff. They excluded you from their.
No,
they screened you out.
No, I didn't get to it, and I still haven't.
Oh, okay.
So when did you move to Minneapolis, and did Wedge Life start shortly after that? Were
Yeah.
you always interested in politics, especially on the local level, or was it something you acquired later on, before or after you moved here?
So I moved here in 2012 as a younger person, though still much older than you at the time. And Wedge Life started a couple of years after because I started going, as I said, I started going to neighborhood association meetings and they were enraging. And I don't know if that period of time there were particularly outlandish things happening at neighborhood association meetings, or I've just gotten numb to it in the years since. I don't get quite as angry, but it's like anti-renter rhetoric. It's basically just it felt like a bunch of older white people who didn't look like the neighborhood I was experiencing as a resident complaining about the neighborhood and the people who lived there. And it made me very mad. And I kept going and tweeting them. And the account that I created to send those tweets was Wedge Live. Didn't expect it to go any place, but it's gotten much bigger in the years since.
Yeah. So what was the evolution of like website, Twitter, or other way around? And then I know the podcast is more of a recent thing.
Yeah, it's been continuously evolving. And I want to go back to the question you asked about whether I had always been interested in local politics or if that was a something that came up as I moved to the city. And it was new. I was the kind of person who only paid attention to national politics because the place where I was from in South Florida didn't have local politics. Like you had county commissioners, but who knew what they did? Politics in suburban America, it's hard, at least it was for me, it's hard to get entry into local politics. Like it exists, but it's hard to see the relevance to your life. And here in Minneapolis, it was very easy. And I trash neighborhood associations, but that's like a symptom of Minneapolis being very, it's got a lot of local politics. It's easy to have it confront you head on. And things like street projects and zoning issues are more present for you as a resident of a city like Minneapolis. And so, yeah, I kind of discovered local politics as a new resident.
Yeah,
Although my, go ahead.
I think Minneapolis, it has a very interesting makeup. With at least outside of Minneapolis, I've read things like whether it be a statewide outlet about how progressive Minneapolis is, whether it be the politicians or the residents, and that's a question I'll get to later. So um, I think I've mentioned it on Twitter, and I definitely mentioned it in our email exchanges that I've wanted to talk with you for a long time. So I've naturally thought of some things I'd mention. One thing I've asked a couple other people about is just how do you find the resources to engage with the community? Like, how do you find events? How do you find connections with people? I know for the few events I've been able to go to, I want to go to events all around Minneapolis. I've used a little bit of Twitter, a lot of Facebook invites, mobilize.us. But then there's that part, and then there's also the people part. Like, how did you meet people such as Jason Garcia or Taylor or Melody or Josh Martin? And how do you make those connections?
I've made, I say this, I've said this before, right? My entire Minneapolis social circle, it feels like, are just people I met through local politics Twitter. There's like being on Twitter, talking about politics and making friends. People like Anton Schieffer goes back. My earliest friend in Minneapolis, probably Anton Schieffer. I met, I think I probably met him first at a community meeting, but we were both very active on Twitter and got closer that way. My collaborator on an organization that we co-founded called Neighbors for More Neighbors, Ryan Johnson, also a guy I was just making jokes on Twitter with. And then we founded this organization together that has since sprung up through the work of a lot of hard work of a lot of other people into something fairly impressive in the years since. So I found Twitter to be a very, as much hate as Twitter gets for the nasty things and the Russian meddling in the election kind of stuff that it gets. I think it has been a positive in my life, a positive for the issues I care about. And I think generally a very useful tool. I try to stay off Facebook it's not my scene. It's terrible. Um, get on your neighborhood email list, sign up for a bunch of different neighborhood org email lists, word of mouth. A lot of people just tell me stuff like, oh, Michael Rainville's holding an event downtown. He'll probably say something terrible. You should go, things like that. I get a lot of people now that I'm more high profile, people are very helpful in sending me tips.
I feel like Twitter does have a reputation of a lot of trolls, a lot of haters, which is definitely true. But I feel like there's also the connections you can make with. I feel like it balances out almost the connections you can make when you tweet that, hey, I'm going through this, or hey, I just did this, and you get that support. I feel
Right.
like that's not seen. It's not juicy.
Yeah.
It's not
And even if
spoken.
you're not on Twitter, you meet a lot of people at community meetings, and there's a good chance they care about the same stuff you do. And that's like 90% of the way to a friendship is caring about the same things. So a lot of talk about loneliness. We did a friendship
Mhm.
episode on the Wedge Live podcast. So check that out. There's a plug. But if you're lonely, and this sounds like terrible advice, but go to a community meeting and find somebody who preferably isn't complaining about the things that you enjoy. Somebody who is hopefully is there, who is there to be a proponent of the things you enjoy, and maybe you share some common interests.
All right. So correct me if I'm wrong. You do not own a car, correct?
I do not own a car. I don't drive.
Yeah.
I'm a professional bus rider,
Hmm.
a licensed pedestrian, and I also ride bikes.
Yeah.
I don't own a bike either though. I'm full-time nice ride.
All right. So yeah, I know you talk about a lot on online and on the podcast about buses and biking. I listened to the Hennepin Avenue episode shortly. I think it was between the veto and the initial approval. So has this always been the case? Did you ever or did you ever have a license? And what has drawn you to biking over driving? Besides, I know there's the obvious environmental and the aspects of it and the affordability. Was it just those? Because I am someone who wants to bike more often. I unfortunately rely on a car for a lot of my travel. And since I'm such an amateur biker, I can't bike a lot without getting tired and sweaty. And so I want to
Yeah.
practice to
Well,
start using it for transportation more.
you should check out Nice Ride's e-bikes. I was They're kind of expensive to do them all the time, even if you're a member, but I found their e-bikes are enjoyable, although I still ride the classic green bikes. Let's see. And I'm going back to what your question is. Has it always been the case that I haven't driven a car? I have done a little bit of driving, but I will say for the vast majority of my life, not a driver. Uh, and it's not like a moral stand. A lot of people, and I don't, there's a lot of people who like make it about climate, and I think that is important and very relevant. I will talk about that extensively too, but for me it is quality of life, and it's one of the reasons I moved to Minneapolis. People will, in the Wedge neighborhood in particular, is the density of grocery stores, the access to transit, the ability to bike and walk places. This is a quality of life decision for me, and a huge part of why I advocate for this, in addition to the climate benefits, but those are secondary. I'm going to tell you, I'm very selfish about this. It's quality of life issues. And like the hundreds of dollars that I don't spend on gas, on car payments, on insurance is just, I don't know, that makes my life better. I think it could make other people's lives better if they have the ability to do something like that. And I want to create more places in Minneapolis where that's possible by advocating for better transit, better bike infrastructure, more housing, because Minneapolis is the only, I won't say the only place, you could probably do it a few places in St. Paul, but like this is where you can do that in the state of Minnesota. There are no other places like that, and they're very rare across the country. So we should create more of them. We should be acting and asking our government, our local governments to do things that create more of these places.
Yeah, I think there's a comfort that gets in, kind of becomes habit. I know even for me, I've thought, "Oh, I don't want to ride the bus to school. That just I'm uncomfortable doing it. I haven't done it for a long time.
Right.
Um,
There are a
and I
lot of people who like their car breaks down and then they realize, well, I could get by pretty like they can't afford to repair it, or it's just like their car sits there broken down and they have transitioned that way, where it's like, oh, this isn't too bad. A lot of people through hardship have realized, wow, I was spending a lot of money on my car, and now that I can't afford to repair it, maybe I've realized I don't need it anymore. But it's all dependent on where, like, do you live in a place where you could conceivably give up your car, or all the places you have to go like 2 or 3 transfers away or something?
I think there's definitely self-evaluation that needs to go on with myself and with anybody else who does all their transportation with cars.
Yeah.
There's a
Well, if it doesn't make you happy,
Mhm.
if you're happy driving everywhere, I'm not gonna. But I will say it's I can recommend it. You should give it a try. If you live in a place where it's possible, it's worth giving a try.
Um, there is an elephant in the room, and that is that I
Oh,
strongly dislike cats.
oh, well, I don't own a cat. Listen, the whole cat thing is an act.
All
It's a
right,
total
well, I
act.
was gonna ask, my next question is you've made headlines all over about the Wedge Cat Tour.
Mhm.
So basically just what is it? How long has it been going? And how has it been going recently with 2021, 2020, COVID, and then the Hennepin Avenue veto?
Wow. The cat tour thing has turned into a whole drawn out saga, hasn't it? So it started out of, and I kind of joke that I don't like cats. I sort of like cats. Cats are fine. I enjoy cats. But it started out of my love for my voice sounds a little scratchy. I'm going to take a drink and then I'll start again. Do you edit your podcast?
A little bit.
Okay. So you can edit the part out where I pause for a drink,
All
right?
right.
Or
Yep.
you can leave it in. I don't care. And this probably won't fix my voice, but whatever. So it started, I was taking a lot of walks. That's what I do. One of my main forms of transportation is walking places, to the park, to the lake, to the grocery store. One of the things you notice in a dense neighborhood with buildings, a lot of buildings up close to the sidewalk, a lot of windows in apartment buildings. A lot of people own cats. And what do cats like to do? They like to look out the window and either watch people, enjoy the sun. Cats are constantly in windows. And so that's one of the things that makes walking places interesting, is seeing all the cats. And I was posting to Twitter quite frequently on Wedge Live, and I would post pictures of cats. And another thing about cats, people love cat pictures on the internet. And it became a little bit of a thing. In the first year, I think as a joke, I mean, I'm walking places seeing cats. Why don't I have an event where I invite other people to walk places and look at cats in windows? There's also a little bit of an inspiration from like their historic home tours in the Wedge neighborhood. That's a big thing. And I'm generally irritated with the kind of person who goes to a historic home tour, though I won't say they're all bad people. Most of them are. And so to get back at those people, not entirely to get back at them, but to like make fun of it in a little way, we had a cat tour, and it grew into a much bigger thing than any Wedge historic home tour has been. So it's kind of like revenge. And it's a way to share my love of walking and apartment buildings, and not quite love of cats, but cats are there and cats are fun. And so the cats are kind of the simultaneously the main attraction and not really all that relevant to it at all. It gets people in the door.
You said
Oh,
the
and you
word,
mentioned the Hennepin Avenue
yeah.
veto thing. Yeah. So a lot of small businesses threatened to cancel to close their beloved store if a street reconstruction goes through and they lose parking. What I said was, I will close my cat tour here in Minneapolis, be the first business to close in Minneapolis in response to the mayor vetoing our full-time bus lanes. And I kept my promise. There is no cat tour this year. Hundreds of people come to Minneapolis every summer to attend the Wedge Life Cat Tour, but not this year. Minneapolis is not back. Mayor Fry forced me to cancel the cat tour, and shame on you, Mayor Fry. You should have given us a full-time bus lane.
You mentioned the word grocery store, and so this wasn't even written down, but I was thinking about it. What's with the Aldi?
What's with the Aldi? What do
Yeah,
you mean, what's with the Aldi?
I don't know anyone else who goes to Aldi.
Really? Do you not have an Aldi near you?
Probably not.
Oh.
Like maybe
So
Columbia Heights.
I think Aldi is a great, the prices are super low. I like that it limits my choice. There's basically one of each item. I don't need a wall of different brands, name brands. I don't need name brands. Give me a store full of generic items, very low priced. But the big key to Aldi is that it's a block from where I live. So again, I like to walk everywhere. If you put a grocery store a block from where I live, I can never move again. I'm stuck here in the wedge. It's such a joy to not have to either load groceries on a bike, load them into a car, whatever, however you load them into a bus, not have to do that, to be able to walk 2 minutes and you're in a grocery store. You could go every day if you want. Quality of life. My quality of life has gone up tremendously since the Aldi went in. So they'll always have a place in my heart. And you should give Aldi a try.
All right.
Make sure you bring a quarter so you can withdraw a card. It's a little bit of a deposit, so you bring it back and bring your own bags. And be ready for the cashier to launch everything into your cart very fast. It takes like 30 seconds for the cashier to ring up your entire cart.
So I just have a few more questions left, and they're
I see that we have 8 minutes left.
Oh, I didn't know you could see that.
Did you not spring for the pay version of Zoom? Oh, wow. A podcast with a time limit. We've only got 8 minutes. I shouldn't waste any time.
Yeah, I thought I was the only one who could see that. All right. But there is only a few questions left, and they're all about the political makeup of Minneapolis. So this is what I kind of mentioned it earlier. There's this view inside and outside of Minneapolis. I'd say probably more so outside, that Minneapolis is all about the progressive versus the super progressives. But how true is that to you? And how would you explain people like Fry and Radinovich, people like Micah Rainville, Lisa Goodman, Lene Palmisano, Don Samuels, to people who have this assumption?
I think people like Rainville is in a whole different universe. He's like a legit, I can't speak to what's in his heart, but like he seems like a legit old school Republican. I think he's a Democrat because he lives in Minneapolis. Like Barb Johnson, his cousin, has gone on to endorse Republicans for county commissioner. He's like, the Rainville family is like generic Twin Cities region Republican types, I think. So moderate Republicans. Maybe not quite Trumpers, but I don't know. I don't know what's in his heart. He's a Democrat by convenience. Linnea Palmisano, I say all the time that Ward 13, that's probably as progressive as they'll elect, but maybe I'm wrong. There are people organizing in Ward 13. So I wouldn't saddle Palmisano with the Rainville label. We've definitely gotten more, the council's gotten more conservative following the 21 election because of just the salience of the crime issue. And it's unfortunate because people bring up the defund the police. It's not as though the last city council even lifted a finger to defund the police. Budgets are higher than ever. The Steve Fletcher, Lisa Bender, Jeremy Schrader, Philippe Cunningham budget for the police is what we're living through right now here in 2022. The budget they adopted at the end of 21. Minneapolis police has never had their funding cut in a way that caused them to have to lay off officers. Officers have just quit. But nonetheless, like crime is up locally, nationwide, and it has caused a shift on the council. And I think Jacob Fry has become our Norm Coleman. I think that's the analogy people use. And you should look up Norm Coleman, because I, as a non-Minnesotan, I was not, like, I knew who Norm Coleman was. I was not intimately familiar with the shift he underwent many years ago, whenever that was. Apparently he was the Democratic mayor of St. Paul. Is that correct? And a lot of people decided they didn't like him and they yelled at him a lot, and he turned into a Republican and became a senator. That's just a very long answer, and I feel like the time is ticking away. It's a very important question. What did I not get to in your question?
Just, I guess, how did Minneapolis get this reputation of it's all progressives?
I mean, it's all one party rule. If you elect Lisa Goodman to the Senate, the US Senate, for example, she'd be a pretty progressive Democrat, I think. But like when it comes to local issues, yeah, she's going to oppose a bike lane. She's going to oppose a bus lane. She's going to be she's going to back up. She's going to back the blue. Can I use that phrase? she's going to toe the line for MPD. She's going to be a law and order Minneapolis DFLer, if I can use that phrase. There's just different issues locally and nationally. And I feel confident calling a bunch of Minneapolis DFLers on the city council conservative, though they are not, except for Michael Rainville, they are not like what you would traditionally think as conservative. They're not Liz Cheney. They're not, Marco Rubio. They're not Republicans, but like for Minneapolis, yeah, we have factions. We have a lot of people say moderates and progressives, and I think maybe that's a more relatable way to put it.
And then what do you think of like the differing levels of voice and involvement? Because I mean, for example, I feel like I never hear from Jamal Osman. Actually, the first time I watched a Wedge Live episode was the 2021 endorsements episode. And you said Ward 1, where I currently live, is the place the bus, if you take a bus there, you will not get one back.
It's true.
And subsequently then Councilmember Kevin Reich not being very vocal or aggressive or influential.
Mhm.
So it's always going to be the case where some people are more vocal, but are there certain members of the council who you think are too passive?
So weirdly, I would say Lisa Goodman, although that would take some explaining to do. Some Lisa Goodman as she didn't, for example, felt very strongly behind the scenes about the Hennepin Avenue bus lane and layout in general, but said absolutely nothing in public. It's weird how so a couple of her private emails, like her work emails, came out where she was warning someone who'd written in to support the bus lane, don't share my comments on Twitter, like anticipating that that's what would happen. And the person was Kate Knuth. I don't think Kate Knuth was about to share screenshots of her email, former mayoral candidate Kate Knuth, on Twitter. It was a weird thing to accuse Kate Knuth of, but she's very like, she doesn't use Twitter at all. I don't think she uses Facebook as a platform for her office at all. So very non-communicative on social media. So in that way, I'd say she's publicly passive and not very effective. Like a lot of people are worked up about Southwest Light Rail. The only Minneapolis council member to have been on the council through the whole saga of Southwest Light Rail is Lisa Goodman. What has she done for you, Ward 7? She's done nothing for you. She voted against the Hennepin Avenue layout, but and I guess she was kind of effective at making it worse. So she got that for you, Ward 7. Let's see, passive. Who else is passive? You don't hear a lot from Jamal Osman, although like I'm not very conversant in like Ward 6 politics, meaning like Somali politics and East African politics. So I have a hard time like speaking to whether maybe he's extremely present in the community. And I don't know. I don't know what he's up to. Who else? I'm running through everyone in my mind. I don't know. I don't know who I would describe as passive. What I have noticed in the time that we've transitioned from a strong council to strong mayor, and the fact that like city staff in departments now answer to the mayor, it's a lot less action on legislation. Our legislative branch has been defanged. They don't have the staffing power. And it irritates me that we talk so much about, well, we're adding a commissioner of community safety under the mayor. We're adding this or that staff person or leadership role into the executive branch. It feels like, and they are talking about adding people to the legislative branch in terms of legislative staff, but it doesn't feel like we're acting with the urgency to staff up the legislative branch. And I worry that like, that's just going to languish. The city council's ability to do their job is just going to languish.
All right. Well, so we're almost out of time. So I'm just going to ask one real quick question. The way you end your episodes, anything to plug, any books or shows or podcasts you're enjoying?
Well, definitely my favorite podcast is the Wedge Live podcast. Everyone should listen. Geez. I've been playing this like hospital simulator on Xbox. 2-point hospital. Okay, I'm back.
All right.
I want to make it clear to the audience that Jason Sellers' podcast is not sprung for the pay version of Zoom, and I got booted out of my recommendation for a very cheesy video game hospital simulator that I was plugging, and I didn't have much more to say about it.
All right.
Uh, I'm sure there's other stuff I enjoy. I do ask this question a lot, and I haven't given it the proper thought. I don't know if I've given this question the attention it deserves. You took the time to ask it. I enjoy walks to the park, walking places, biking places. Yeah, I have a pretty boring life. Wedge life consumes so much of my mental energy. And as I say, politics, local politics has become far less enjoyable recently. And so the risk of getting so involved in local politics that it becomes your hobby, if things go bad, your hobby becomes toxic to you and it makes you unhappy. So the warning to young people who want to get involved in politics. I also notice a lot of young people getting involved in politics for the sake of politics, like they want to work in politics. And I don't like that at all. You should get involved in politics because you may want to make a difference in the world. Never get jaded. Never become Joe Radinovich, where you're just a mercenary doing harm to the world through your very, very what's a good way to describe it? Sleazy brand of politics. Don't become a ladder climber. Don't go into politics as a profession. Oh, we always stay a pure-hearted activist trying to do good in the world. No, don't seek glory for yourself.
When we were low on time, I skipped one question, but I think it kind of fits at the end of the episode because it is about the future. What do you think the effects of this weird 2-year term thing is? How do you think it's made the 2021 electeds behave both in council and community, and how do you think it'll affect people from both their perspective, but also a voter turnout perspective?
Well, it's an immediate turnaround. So you're immediately thinking about, how do I get reelected? I don't know if it's affected anyone's behavior, but like there's no rest for the weary. What I'm hoping is that it makes Lisa Goodman so exhausted that she decides to give it up. Like, do I really want to run another election for another 2-year term? But she always gets reelected very easily, very comfortably. So who knows? But yeah, and another way to frame it is we've got 2023 is a chance to redeem ourselves and elect a better non-moderate. Get rid of Michael Rainville, for example. We don't need a Republican on the Minneapolis City Council, allegedly a Republican. So yeah, we can fix our mistake in 2023. That's the advantage. And I don't know how optimistic I am that we can. And we have to wait until 2025 to fix our mistake in the mayor's office.
Yeah, I think it's just added a lot of confusion.
In what way?
I just think a lot of people don't realize they are 2-year terms. So at least a lot of people who don't follow politics.
That's certainly true.
Closely.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed, I think one reason we had very low turnout in this election is 2020, the presidential election, was so emotional, and like it felt like the most important election of all of our lives. Like, oh, if we reelect Trump, the country is over. The stakes were very high in 2020. And then in 21, we have a city election where it's like the police department has disintegrated. The existence of Minneapolis is on the line. Like, whether you think this is a violently racist and corrupt institution, MPD, or you think like it's the only thing standing between us and the apocalypse, emotions were very high and turnout was very high because of that. That's 2 years in a row where people are perceiving existential threats and getting very emotional about it. And then in 2022 comes along and it's like, I don't know, like it didn't seem to register. What was the thing to get people out to care? Other than if you're like a Ward 13 resident who votes in every election, and then you show up, and Don Samuels has a very, very strong performance for that reason because of the low turnout.
20-point swing. All right. Yeah. Unless you have any questions for me, I think we can just wrap things up.
Okay. Well, I like that. Have any of your episodes run this long before?
I don't know. I think the Elliot Payne or a lot of my solo episodes have, at least my first
Did
couple.
you also force him to go through the indignity of reconnecting? after your 30 minutes expired? Did you force him to do that?
I'm not gonna lie, I did a test Zoom about 5 minutes before I let you in, so that kind of run our time down a little
Um,
bit. I haven't recorded many episodes on this new laptop, so
well, I know how it is to run a low rent operation because that's Wedge Live too. Although I do pay for a podcasting service. I use Riverside. It's not that surprisingly not that expensive, but also not cheap if it's not something you're doing professionally.
yeah. All right. I think the
Do you want
viewers,
to do a little inside baseball about podcasting? What are
sure.
your likes and your dislikes, your pet peeves? How many episodes have you done?
I believe this is my eighth. I've
Okay.
had I've had guests on two. Elliot Payne and Park Board candidate Billy Menz, who ran unopposed in my district and who I've known for a long time.
Hmm.
And I try to vary it between Minneapolis and national and Minnesota politics.
I feel
This
like
is
your questions have spurred me to give very long and detailed answers. I think your questions have been good, or I can just bullshit like crazy. What do you think? Have I been a good guest?
yeah. I think I got to a point where it was kind of a crunch because I feel like I'm rushing this, but at the same time we don't have enough time. This episode will be too short. This episode is too long, and but I think it's been a nice balance.
You can make it a two-parter. You could tease it out. No, don't make it a two-parter. If people are willing to listen, I don't. I have episodes that are extremely long, as you can
Mhm.
tell by the fact that I'm dragging out your episode for no reason at all, just so I have someone to talk to for an extra 10 minutes. But I don't know. I stopped being so self-conscious about like it's too long. I, who cares? If people listen, they listen. If they don't listen, that's how you have to approach it. I don't care if nobody listens to this podcast. I got to have a conversation with someone, and that's all that matters. And I don't care about the audience at all. I don't care about their comfort, how much they enjoy it. It's all for me. Otherwise, you get very self-conscious, and then you won't do it. And you'll never succeed if you don't try. That's what they say.
Yeah, I think Zoom's the one who cares about it being too long, apparently.
Yeah,
Uh,
they wanted to get you to do the pay thing. They want you to pay them money.
if if I was like a candidate and I was doing a forum, of course I would pay for it, but I only use Zoom for this pretty much nowadays. And yeah, so I've done a couple episodes in a couple different locations, all of which have been in my house, but this is my first one with my new background. Got this map that I bought that
Oh,
has a couple mistakes on it.
okay.
Lyndhurst only has one N and it says Lake Calhoun still,
Hmm.
which is kind of worrisome. And I got some textbooks and my high school diploma. But yeah, so I set this up the past couple days in anticipation for this episode. And I've emailed a couple more people, like I'll name drop Mary Moriarty's campaign and Elliot Payne
Ooh.
again to see if he would like to do an episode on what it's like to be day-to-day operations of a city council member. And I know Cam Gordon really well, so maybe I'll get him on soon.
Yeah, Cam has entered life as a journalist now.
Mhm.
I should talk to Cam. That's one of the things I don't like is booking guests. I don't like doing that. I need to bring someone on. That's what I can't afford. I can't afford to bring someone on to book my guests for me. So I have to do it. And it's you're asking someone to give up their time potentially, and my podcast has a reputation for going very long. So you're giving up a huge chunk of your life to be with me. And there's no guarantee that this episode will be any good at all when you do that. So I am grateful to all my guests who give up their time to come on. And I feel very self-conscious about asking. I don't like doing it. There are people that I have had in mind to ask to be on the podcast for a while, and I haven't done it yet because I just can't bring myself to do it. And then the email back and forth, the scheduling, it's not tremendously laborious, but that is also irritating to me. I have a lot of anxieties.
Yeah, first time I wanted guests on the show, I emailed, I think, Kevin Reich, Elliot Payne, and then Fry, Sheila Najad, who I had met, and Kate Knuth, and I said in all the emails, I said, I understand you're busy. If you don't even want to reply back to this email, that's fine. I was
That's a good approach.
so
That's a good
scared of the
approach.
rejection.
Yeah. I know I'm so worthless and you don't want to reply to me. So it's okay if you take that route. That's a good it's a good out you're giving people. Have a little more self-confidence. A little more. But I like your mindset. That's my mindset too. I just hide a little better.
Yeah, I tweeted like a couple months ago, just looking for guests. Anybody want to respond? And nobody did, but I wasn't really expecting much.
What freaks me out a little bit is how seriously people take me. Like Wedge Live has become a relatively big thing, and people take me too seriously. I think like I have too much power. That's what I'll say. I am too big time, in other words. But then I look at other people who have influence. I'm like, okay, I kind of deserve this influence. I deserve a little bit of influence if that person's going to have influence.
Yeah, Tom Hoke endorsing a whole slate. All right. Yeah, I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jason.
It was very, very exciting for me to finally meet you as somebody who likes politics, somebody who likes media. I don't want to say the word idol because your ego's already so big, but
Right.
it's cool to meet somebody with the same interests.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So yeah, thanks for coming in
and please tag me when you tweet this out
yes.
so we can bring a whole large audience to your podcast. And it's going to be a lot of pressure and you're going to get very anxious about it. And you may quit podcasting altogether because you become so big and the anxiety about producing episodes just gets to you. But in other words, just tag me and we'll tweet it out and we'll get you an audience.
All right. Hopefully the audio was good until the last 10 seconds when the dog started barking. So
it's another one of my anxieties. Have I sounded good this whole time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard for me to tell when I'm listening because I'm driving, but so from where I'm sitting right now, everything sounds good. So
okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. See ya. So that was John Edwards of the Wedge Live podcast. Thanks for tuning in. You can subscribe here on YouTube or follow on Spotify. You can follow me on Twitter at VoteSellers, follow me on Instagram at VoteSellers, follow me on Facebook, Jason Sellers Politics, and go to my website. It's kind of a long one, votesellers.wixsite.com/votesellers. Like I said, I don't have a budget. That's why I had to do the Zoom meeting in 2 parts. But thank you for watching and being here and listening and engaging. And let's continue to work. Bye.